Who will fund the fight against climate change? The thorny issue of climate financing is taking centre stage at the COP26 summit. Day 3 has already seen discussions on the role of money in achieving net zero targets. Tensions are expected as leaders tussle over how much richer nations will give to poorer countries to help them in the fight. That's especially in light of a stalled promise made over a decade ago. Live to Laura Makin-Isherwood in Glasgow in just a moment. But first, a look at what's at stake.
Curbing emissions, saving forests. Ambitious commitments have been made in Glasgow, but it all boils down to money. Who will fund the fight against climate change, and to what extent? Climate finance is shaping up to be a thorny issue, especially in light of a broken promise. 12 years on, a spending pledge of $100 billion a year by rich nations has missed its target. And developing nations are getting vocal as they bear the brunt of global warming.
We're naturally very disappointed by the failure of the wealthy nations to honor their commitments of making available $100 billion annually to the poorer countries to assist us in the fight against climate change, and by the unavailability of the technology transfer that will help us find sustainable ways of charting a path out of this existential crisis.
Countries with low-lying coastal areas like Suriname and the small island developing states are amongst the most vulnerable countries, yet these countries receive no more than 2% of global climate finance between 2016 and 2018.
All eyes are now on the COP26 summit in the hope that world leaders can iron out the kinks and commit to a concrete plan. But more importantly, that commitments can lead to change.
What we all ought to remember is when the drastic climate changes hit, it will choose no location, might or weak, poor or rich country. The time to act is now.
Laura Makin-Isherwood joins us live now from Glasgow. Laura, some are billing climate finance as the issue that might make or break the COP26 summit.
Yeah, they are, and they have been from the start of this, well, even since before this climate summit got underway, because there's been a lot of pressure mounting on those developed nations that have used carbon and fossil fuels to develop their own countries and economies, to then offer more finance to those developing nations and other areas that are deemed to be most at risk from the impacts of climate change in order to fund their transition towards greener economies, and also to fund mitigation projects that might protect them from the worst of the damage. And there's been a bit of a sort of a sad, I suppose, development here today. The UK Finance Minister Rishi Sunak has given a speech, and he's actually indicated that he doesn't think that $100 billion target that has been set since 2009 for developing nations to offer up in the form of climate finance will be met this year either. It's been missed since 2013. He says it could be 2023 before that $100 billion target is finally hit. Of course, over the last couple of years, economies around the world have been having to tackle the coronavirus, the impacts of that on their economies. But there are many saying that climate change is an even bigger issue than that. It will have more long-term effects and actually impact on economies in a much more dramatic way than coronavirus ever has. So there will be plenty of people really pushing for developing nations to do even more now.
And climate change doesn't discriminate, does it? I mean, we're all in this boat together, and that's something developing countries are getting increasingly vocal about.
They are indeed. And as I said, some of those developing nations are the ones that are going to be worst hit by the effects of climate change. Desertification, flooding. Many are seeing their coastal regions already having the sea encroaching and reclaiming the land, if you like. Many of those homes that are based around those coastal areas are actually being pushed into the sea further. And there will be millions, billions possibly displaced as a result of this. So the people that are in those areas, the danger zones, the real danger zones. I suppose all of us, as you say, are in this same boat, and we will all experience the impacts of climate change one way or another. But those that are in those maximum impact areas are really starting to try to appeal to the hearts of leaders and get them on board and really say, you have to do something now, even if it's not affecting you.
Laura, thank you for that update. Laura Makin-Isherwood there in Glasgow.